Yeah. So the significance, of course, of this battle we've seen in Shifa Hospital is that the Palestinians have resisted around the hospital and fought valiantly against this Israeli invasion of the hospital. One of three hospitals, as you said, Nora, in your introduction, that is being raided simultaneously. The Israelis are using these hospitals as propaganda features of their war as well. And they're focusing, as we've said from November, because following this war, hour by hour, it was very clear immediately in the early days of the ground invasion, as we reported on the live stream, that it appeared right away like their operation was destined for the hospital and no other place, that was the goal of the operation, was to attack the hospitals. In November, the justification for the Shifa raid was, of course, that there was a command and control center, that they made this fictitious underground secret layer that Hamas is using. Interestingly, in this raid of Shifa Hospital, there isn't any claims about that, although the previous justification would seem to suggest that the Palestinians would use this tunnel apparatus in the hospital. But this time, now 6 months on, um, they don't need to lie in detail anymore. They can just lie superficially, and it works. The Israeli, as Nora reported in her introduction, there's brutality all throughout this raid on Shifa Hospital, as is obvious if you raid a hospital full of patients, injured people, and their families looking after them. That's brutal crimes. The Israeli army says that they haven't hurt one single person who's not a terrorist at Shifa Hospital. The lies are just they're not even trying anymore on these lies. And so I want to report today on the resistance around the hospital, because the focus of the Palestinian resistance in the north has been to fight back against this hospital attack. The hospitals put the resistance in an impossible position. If you defend the hospital, you cut it off from people trying to access it. But the goal by Israel of these hospital raids is to dismantle the hospital. It's what they're when they leave the hospital will be no longer functioning. It's not a raid looking for people inside the facility, it's the dismantling of the facility. And we're seeing this from the Israelis in place of what was previously during the ground operation. They would at least say that they were nominally entering the tunnels. They were at least entering the first layer of tunnels in some cases. They're not even saying that anymore. They're just attacking hospitals. They attacked Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis and dismantled it, you know, only days after the hospital had got up and functioning. We watched for weeks as they besieged Nasser Hospital and dismantled it, and the Palestinians got the hospital back up and running, and the Israelis invaded it again. So we're clearly seeing, and we've seen it from the start, but now we just have obvious confirmation that these are the objectives for the Israeli military, is to dismantle these hospitals. Um, and the international press is letting them. It's not the front page of the New York Times this round that the Shifa Hospital is being sacked, which we're seeing. So let's take a look at some of these videos from this past week. And again, everything that we're going to show you is just from the last week. And let's start with number one here tomorrow. So this is fighting around Shifa Hospital, and we can see tracer bullets here. We've taken out the audio as usual, but you can see there we're watching a gunfight on the ground level. And we're watching now a fighter moving through the rubble and hitting a Merkava tank that's stationed around the hospital. These tanks entered Shifa, the raid on Shifa, through the Netzarim corridor that we reported on last week. If you didn't catch that episode, go back and check that out. We talked about how Israel's creating a military highway to cut the Gaza Strip in half and allow them to raid into Gaza City, which is one of the reasons why the resistance had to put up a fight over this, because this can't be normalized, that they can just move into the city and raid these hospitals in this way. So we're seeing, again, one of the 1,200 Yasin shots throughout this war, just from the Qassam brigades. This is a Qassam brigades video. We're watching a Yasin moving through the rubble, hitting the tank there. Another strike on the tank. If we could go to number 2 tomorrow. This is all happening while inside the hospital, patients are being attacked. And so outside the hospital, this battle is raging. We're seeing here a second Yasin shooter, along with a cameraman. He's setting up his sights there. And somebody was asking last week about what kind of tracking system these Yasins have. They just have that sight. There's no heat-seeking capability on these. On the RPG round, the effectiveness of the RPG of the Yasin is the proximity. It's that fighters can get within a half a block with this man-portable shoulder-fired rocket. And we can see here, we're seeing 2 different camera angles on this single tank being hit. And all of these videos that I'm going to show you coming up will show similar things, which is that the fighters are able to move around the city. The clearing operations are targeted against civilians in the neighborhood of Shifa Hospital, but these fighters are still moving around. And 6 months on, 5 months into the ground invasion, and we're still not seeing Israelis outside of their tank defending these areas. And so fighters have freedom of movement around this area, around Shifa Hospital in this case, but we've seen it in various other places. And we can maybe switch to the next one after this shot here tomorrow. It's difficult to see if that's a counter measure here. So now we're seeing an elevated shot. And if we can see, this Merkava tank has his barrel pointed down the road, and he's using this building as cover. And the Palestinian resistance fighter is able to clearly hit the tank on the turret, in between the hull of the tank and the turret, which is one of the weakest spots on the vehicle. And maybe when we go through it this time, we can pause it tomorrow on the hit, because it's, if you could see the tank barrel pointed down the street here, and Qassam freezes this shot here to show you, you can see the tank round there exploding out of the barrel from clearly a direct hit on that tank. The tank driver and commander is up in that turret area. And so we're seeing a direct hit, and they're seeing footage here filmed from a separate location by the Palestinian resistance. And we're seeing these media ops be embedded in these operations, in these attacks, in the same way. We're not seeing any shortage of this after 5 months of ground invasion at this point. So clearly a direct hit on that. And the Israelis claimed in the first days of this now more than a week-long operation in Shifa that a commander from their forward command team was killed, and another injured. And they didn't say which incidents there are, but we can see from that shot that appears to be one of them. The Israelis are still not reporting their casualties. They said in the new year that they would be reporting their casualties every day. And they just stopped doing that within a few weeks in January. And the reports from the Israelis of their casualties continues to be commanders. They seem to report the commanders that are killed in these, but it's unclear if after the fact we're going to hear about their true casualty numbers. People are constantly asking me what I believe the numbers are, and I don't want to speculate, because we don't know. From the Israeli media, reports seem to suggest that it's at least double what they're reporting. At this point, they've reported 250 killed just in the ground invasion So it's not clear, and I don't want to put a number on it because we just don't know, because they have not been reporting their casualties. And as we know from the battle from Hamidtown last week, that their commanders aren't even reporting to the families themselves the casualties. So there's real difficulty putting the information together. We know that from certain hospitals in the south alone, claim more casualties at their single hospital in the south than Israel has said in the overall war. So we know that the numbers don't add up, and the Israeli media has started to report on that. But of course, to just reiterate to the audience, um, anyone reporting out of Israel is subject to the military censor, which would pull all of this information out of any news report. And we also know that the Israelis have stationed military people in every single hospital in Israel to control information coming out of those hospitals. And we've seen doctors in Israel protesting against that because they believe that the numbers should be released. And in previous wars, the Israeli numbers were released. So their attempt to keep morale up by lying about their casualties, it's not clear that that's a long-term strategy that's going to work out for their state. So maybe we could go to the next one tomorrow here. And again, we're watching fighters moving through the buildings here. We get a good shot of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 fighter moving into position. We've taken out the audio, but you can hear him communicating with his spotter. He sees a Merkava tank straight in front of him, and fires. And you can hear in the audio the fighters talking to each other because the spotter is looking for the tank ahead of time, so that the fighter isn't sitting in a window, waiting like the Israelis do, sitting in a window waiting to fire. The spotter tells them when the vehicle's getting into position, and then the fighter moves in, immediately fires, and then turns away and gets out of the building, because the Israelis will target the building from where the fire came from. That's why we don't see the fighters lingering on the aftermath of these 𝐓𝐡𝐞 strikes. So we could go to the next one here tomorrow. Again, we're showing the volume of these reports. These are all from the vicinity of Shifa Hospital. Another Merkava tank hit there. We're seeing it from an elevated firing position, which I've said is where the tank is the weakest on the top. It's built to withstand roadside bombs and buried bombs underneath the vehicle, but they're not as strong up top, because these Israeli tanks are built for the Israelis to fight these kind of wars of occupation, not against another army, but against a guerrilla force that doesn't have aircraft and tank fire and various things that you would want to protect your vehicle against. So these are hitting vehicles in vulnerable spots. And this is one of the urban warfare. The realities of urban warfare is that there's an advantage for Palestinian fighters who can get up to elevated firing positions and fire on these vehicles. So that's another Merkava tank. If we can go to the next one tomorrow. And here's a good shot, a good shot of a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 archer, as they call them, attempting to hit this moving tank. It looks like he misses, because the Israelis have built, and you can see in this footage, a sand berm along this corridor. And so they're using the Netzarim corridor to come from Israel across east-west, across the Gaza Strip, and then they're moving up the waterfront. And so they have built berms along the edges of these streets to protect their vehicles as they're moving up. And so it's a difficult shot on a moving vehicle, but I've shown you a number of times in these videos that the Palestinian resistance is able to hit these moving vehicles. And there's a good shot of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞, the Gaza-made RPG-7 clone. And you can see the tandem warhead there that has two warheads, the initial warhead to defeat the reactive armor or to open up the original hole, an original hole, and then the second round follows through. So these are the weapons that Palestinians have built and clearly have had stockpiles sufficient enough to fight a 5-month ground war. We don't see any indication of these weapons running out, which seems to indicate that likely the production of these weapons is continued throughout the war. Because we're seeing fighters in all of these videos choose weapons that are appropriate for the conditions. It doesn't appear, and again, we're looking for these kind of pieces of evidence, but we're not. There's no reason to believe that the Palestinians. That the Palestinian resistance in Gaza launched the attack on October 7th without being prepared for this ground war that would follow, and all indications are showing that. And the Israelis say that they have eliminated battalions, that they need to go into Rafah because there's 4 battalions left in Rafah, but these are just arbitrary distinctions. They don't match. Qassam battalions don't match to fighter sizes in the way that other militaries do. So to say that there's a battalion isn't indicating the number of fighters that are there. And the defeat of these battalions that the Israelis have claimed is just clearly not true. They're using arbitrary distinctions of combat ineffectiveness, which is a criteria that is 1/3 fighting ability degraded. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing along the waterfront here, that vehicle, that tank is showing you the route to Shifa Hospital. And this is something that the Israelis have prepared because they want to stay inside Gaza in these buffer zones and then raid into these territories, into the urban built up areas. And so this Shifa raid is into the built up areas. And the previous raid before that was in Zaytun, which was a ferocious battle. As soon as they came into the north, they're attacked by clearly functioning guerrilla units that are functioning, what appears to be functioning still in their army formations. They're not ragtag groups anymore, which is what would happen were the Israelis to be successful. But we're not seeing any signs of Israeli success. And these hospital raids are proof of that, because if we were seeing Israeli military successes, we would see the Israelis overrunning positions, finding weapons caches, finding factories, and they're not seeing any of that, let alone finding their own people, which they haven't been able to do. They don't have any intelligence on the ground 5 months into this war that allows them to carry out any kind of operation except against a soft target like a hospital. So maybe we go to the next one after this shot here tomorrow. So we're seeing, again, fighters moving all through this area. I've organized these chronologically. So these are chronological through the week of the fight. Palestinians able to get within a couple hundred feet here, maximum, of these vehicles. And again, in all of these videos, you can see just the utter destruction all around. And the raid on Shifa involved pushing 3,700 displaced people off the Shifa campus. It involved pushing out injured people from their hospital rooms. And then the sacking of the hospital. There's been more than 800 arrests in this operation, and the Israelis stole $3 million in cash from the hospital and bragged about that. They've done that, of course, in numerous places, both in Gaza and the West Bank, stole large amounts of money and bragged about it as if they're somehow winning the war by attacking these hospitals, stealing money, pushing patients out. And what we see from the Palestinians is consistent resistance. As soon as the Israelis were in, these videos started coming out immediately. They come out quickly and responsive to the operations themselves. So we can go to the next one here tomorrow. Here we're seeing a fighter use a loophole in the wall where we see the Israelis knock massive holes out of the wall that makes them very obvious. We can see on this footage the Palestinian fighter in the staircase filming through a tiny loophole with his camera so that the fighter is protected by the wall we can see there, but he's filming out, and we're seeing the fighter load up an F7 fragmentation warhead, North Korean fragmentation warhead that's being fired here against a troop position during the Battle of 𝐓𝐴. So maybe go to the next one here, Tamara. There's a good shot of the weapon. He's pulling his sight up there. And that's the only, there's no optical sight on the Yasin. But we've seen the Palestinians training with these weapons, and getting these weapons in the hands of all their fighters has been the significant strategy of this battle plan for the last 5 months. So maybe we can go to 8B here tomorrow, because we're going to see the Palestinians here use a Sawath explosively formed penetrator against an Israeli tank. So not just Yasin's, but we're seeing it positioned here. We're watching the tank move by and being hit directly on the side by the Sawath, which penetrates 650 millimeters of armor, more than the tank has on that side. And if you can see in this footage, when we loop back through again, you can see the blast wave ripple out from this attack. And we see again here fighters tracking the vehicles. They're able to have spotters in different spots of the battle, communicating with the shooters, and then a cameraman getting it from a separate angle. So we're seeing fighters all over this neighborhood carrying out this resistance, while the Israelis are sacking the hospital inside the hospital. This is a remotely detonated Shawad 3. This is the most recent, the most advanced of 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞 IEDs that they have been working on for more than 15 years on these designs. And so again, you can see when this goes off, you can see the blast wave, the significance of that detonation against that vehicle, which will have to be presumably towed out of there. So maybe we can go to number 9 after this here tomorrow. Because we've also seen sniper operations, al-Ghul sniper operations with the Palestinian-made 50 cal sniper rifle. So this shot is a sniper versus a sniper. We can see the Palestinian fighter is inside, completely inside the building, concealed. We're showing, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is showing us footage here that shows, they're identifying, that shows you can see the lens of the Israeli sniper in the sunlight reflecting. And so the Palestinians can identify their position. And we see the sniper with a direct hit on the Israeli sniper, which is who is carrying out these massacres around the hospital that we're seeing this brutal footage of. People being shot, coming and going from the hospital are from these sniper positions. And so the Palestinian resistance being able to target these snipers is more than just taking out an individual, because these sniper positions are so deadly for the Palestinians in the neighborhood. So we're seeing another al-Ghul sniper attack. The Israelis are showing their position with curtains pulled back, making it obvious that they're inside that position. You can see their spyware, their surveillance technology there being exposed. And we're seeing another sniper, successful sniper operation. All of these casualty reports clearly, again, not matching what we're seeing in the videos being reported from the ground. And here we're seeing 𝐓𝐡𝐞 in this video identify the smoke screen that's being put up by the Israelis to evacuate the injured or killed from this attack. And so this is one sniper attack, and there's a number of them. So maybe we could go to number 10 here tomorrow, because this is a sniper against an Israeli command post, and they're monitoring the command post. We can see here they're identifying a number of Israeli soldiers in this position, taking up a position inside a house, inside the neighborhood, and using it as a fighting position. And in this video, we're seeing 2 al-Ghuls. This is the first time that on video that we have seen on film multiple shooters at the same target. So we're seeing multiple al-Ghul sniper rifle uh, targeting, and we see each one of these rounds hitting the window where the soldiers are inside. And you can clearly see on this video that both of those targets are being hit successfully from multiple positions at the same spot. So again, that's the first time that we've seen multiple snipers on the same target so far during this war. And there was a video released last week, might have been a week and a half ago now, by Al Jazeera Arabic. So there, Qassam showing us both. So Al Jazeera Arabic got footage from Qassam here from a late January sniper operation that we reported on here on the Electronic Intifada. That was targeting the deputy commander of the Shaldag Special Forces Unit, Air Force Special Forces Unit of the IDF, who who was an officer during the raid of Shifa the first time around. And so Qassam provided this extended footage to Al Jazeera that shows the way that these sniper units are tracking, because the sniper operation isn't just the shooting, it's the tracking and surveillance and professionalization that goes into these operations that we don't see on the videos because Qassam gives us tight crops of the videos. But back in the end of January, we reported that this sniper attack was on an officer who took part in the Shifa raid, which the Israelis didn't say that he was sniped. They said that during one of the casualty reports, they said that the Shaldag commander was part of the Shifa raid, but they didn't say that he was sniped. So this was confirmation from Qassam that they were monitoring this position and were able to identify the leadership in this unit and successfully target them. So if we could go back to the previous video, let me just show you the narration here, because we're seeing that Qassam sees the Israeli position and tracks it over multiple days. And watching which soldiers, seeing how they interact with each other. So here's the footage that we have never seen before that shows the position of the Israelis using this sports club in the area as a base in the Al Ramal area, in the Tel Hawa area of Gaza City, in the heart of Gaza City. And so Qassam is showing us this extended footage. And this is something that after the war, I think we're going to see a lot of this because the Qassam edits are very tight edits. So we don't necessarily see all the battle scene that leads up to the operation. But in this case, Qassam confirmed this to Al Jazeera, that they knew that this was the commander and that they were following him and able to target him based on his position. So it's not just against any soldier. They tracked that operation and was able to pick the commander of that. So that was pretty remarkable footage and confirmation of something that we brought to you on Electronic Intifada live stream before Al Jazeera did in late January, early February. And the Al Jazeera report showed more details about the al-Ghul sniper rifle that we've brought to you before on this show. But seeing that extended footage was just really remarkable. I wanted to bring that to you guys and show you that extended footage. So maybe we can go to number 12 here, Tamara, because it's not just around Shifa Hospital that the fighting. This is a video that I showed you a couple weeks back from Zahra, which is in the northwest corner of the middle camps area, attacking from the south to the north, attacking the corridor that the Israelis have set up, cutting the Gaza Strip in half. And so we see the fighter emerging from an attack tunnel here and firing between these two trees. But now we saw this week, if we go to the next one here tomorrow, we saw this week another video released by Qassam showing the same tunnel again, using the same tunnel to carry out an operation, to carry out the same operation. And there's a number of interesting details in this shot. We're seeing them use a tandem 85 here, which is a Qassam invention, taking a previous warhead and adding a second charge to it to make it to make the out-of-date stocks useful again. And we're seeing a direct hit on here on a Merkava tank. From this attack tunnel, the fighter is just emerging from the attack tunnel, and there's dialogue. And he says to he says, "Listen, guys, call the tow truck," as he goes back down into the tunnel, clearly indicating that there's several fighters at least in the tunnel, and call the tow truck. Actually, the literal translation, he says, is "call the winch to come pick them up," which is actually what we've seen the Israelis use to tow these tanks. At the front of their tanks, they have winches, and that's what they are dragging out the hulks of their defeated tanks that we've seen Qassam show them before. So that's in Zahra. Call a tow truck. I think that fighter, that's a moment that will carry on after the war. And I wish we could bring you the audio in these, but we're trying to keep these videos on air. So I just wanted to show you that. That's in this operation, we're hearing gunfire around. So these fighters are emerging from a tunnel that they have used before to defeat Israeli armored vehicles in the middle camp. So it's not just fighting around Shifa Hospital. If we go to the next one tomorrow, this is a 𝐓𝐴 𝐤𝐿 operation in the middle camps, east of the middle camps in the buffer zone. We're seeing the cope cage canopy slat armor that the Israelis put on top of their vehicles to protect against drone attacks after the drone attacks on October 7th. Previously, Israeli tanks did not have those cages above them. But after the efficacy of the Palestinian resistance on October 7th, the Israelis up-armored their vehicles before the ground invasion. So we're watching Saraya al-Quds, this is Islamic Jihad here, watching an Israeli position and taking apart here. We're seeing a 𝐓𝐴 anti-tank, a wire-guided anti-tank missile. This is one of the most common anti-tank missiles. It's a Soviet anti-tank missile. The Iranians have made a clone of this missile, but this looks like an original based on the command center that we're seeing the fighters hook up here, which directs the missile once it's been fired by that joystick to control where the missile hits. And so this is an interesting video from Saraya al-Quds because they show us the whole operation of setting up this weapon and deploying it. We have seen this weapon referred to in field reports during the ground war, but we haven't seen it actually be used. And here's a mortar team. So Saraya al-Quds is monitoring that Israeli position in the buffer zone. Then they're coordinating with their anti-tank missile unit and their mortar units to target this Israeli position. And now Saraya al-Quds is showing us again footage of the medical evacuation from the scene, and another footage of medical evacuations by helicopter of the Israelis well within range of the weapons that we've just shown on this show today, within range of the al-Ghul rifle, within range of this anti-tank weapon. And they're not targeting them. Palestinian resistance is apparently not targeting these medevac helicopters, which is an interesting thing that we've been following throughout this war that appears to be continues. And so we're seeing this is a man-portable anti-tank unit. And so we're seeing the Saraya al-Quds fighters set up the missile before this launched. And this is the thing about Saraya al-Quds videos that we point out all the time, is that they stick with the footage for longer. And so we get to see some of the more details of these operations. And so this is an anti-tank missile strike on a troop position. So these are very effective weapons to be using against a troop position. And it's interesting to see that footage because we haven't seen the 𝐓𝐴 𝐤𝐿 be used before. The Iranians call it the Rod anti-tank missile. And so we saw that used on October 7th, and we've seen it in field reports, but this is the first time we've seen it on film. And the mortar units, again, are constant. I don't bring the mortar unit shots videos for the most part because there's so many other videos to show. But these mortar rounds are constantly being used. And if we go to the next one here tomorrow, it's perfect timing there. Now we're seeing a Țărail Quds unit in a tunnel here, and they're saluting the Jenin brigades as they're moving through after the assassination that Nora reported on at the beginning of the show. After the assassination in Jenin, these fighters are saluting those fighters in their tunnel position. And we see this as an elite unit of Țărail Quds in the north. They say, today Ramadan is upon us as part of the battle of Al-Aqsa flood from here, from under the earth, from the tunnels of Țărail Quds Northern Brigade elite unit. We send salutes to the axis of resistance led by the Yemenis and our people in Lebanon and the Jenin brigades and all of the brigades fighting throughout the West Bank. May you be well. And then we see this unit move through the tunnel underground to come up into an anti-air defense to an air defense unit, and we're seeing them use a Dushka heavy machine gun targeting footage there, showing us a Heron drone, an Israeli drone. And so the tunnel it's a tunnel-borne operation. The tunnel feeds the fighters moving into this concealed position. And using this heavy machine gun that we saw on October 7th be mounted on pickup trucks during the operation against Israeli bases. And we're seeing it here from Țărail Quds be used against an Israeli drone. We've seen drones in pieces and so that's partly if using a weapon like this would destroy the drone. But we've also seen drones be hacked and apparently landed safely without a scratch on them. That's not what's going to happen if you hit that drone with the 50 cal that we're seeing. So remarkable footage from Țărail Quds showing us a tunnel base, showing us them immediately responding to actions in the West Bank, saluting their fighters, aware of the multi-front battle, shouting out the Yemeni and Hezbollah resistance, which I've wanted to bring to people every time they do that, because that's an interesting part of the battle, the way that the fighters are communicating with each other on the battlefield. If we go to the next one, Tamara's. This is in Beit Hanun. So this is also in the north. This is a Qassam video in Beit Hanun. This is the first place that the Israelis invaded. This was the first place the Israelis said they had absolute control over, which is just clearly a lie in November, and 6 months on, it's even more so. So here we're seeing a Qassam fighter hitting a D9 armored bulldozer with a Yasin in Beit Hanun, an area the Israelis said that they have controlled. So if we go to the next one here tomorrow, we can see this is a rocket unit because the rockets have continued. There was rocket attacks on Ashkelon the other day, and this is Țărail Quds showing us them setting up this rocket attack and leaving a note here. And that note says that at 9 p.m. tonight, these rockets will be fired. And they're setting up these positions after all these months, after Israel having military presence in the north. These rockets are being fired right under their nose, and sure enough, at 9 p.m., Țărail Quds fired on Ashkelon, and that's footage of that. So I wanted to show you that resistance as well. The rockets are continuing. More than 13,000 rockets have been fired through this war. So the battle at Shifa, the battle throughout the north, carrying on.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.